From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
There's more than peanuts in Georgia.
It's still looking like this is going to be a record year for citrus.
We highlight this growing cash crop in the peach state. Could a new farm bill still get done this year?
Let's get a bill done this calendar year.
A look at the latest possibilities as President-elect Trump names a potential leader for the EPA. The impact it could have on the biofuels industry this morning on AgDay.
AgDay is brought to you by Pioneer. Put Pioneer brand corn's exclusive genetics on your team. Win with higher yields and industry-leading traits. Pioneer brand corn. Your best year starts here.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. President-elect Trump is continuing to build his future administration. His latest selection, former New York Congressman Lee Zeldin, to lead the Environmental Protection Agency. AgDay's Michelle Rook joins me. Michelle, among the things Zeldin supported was President Trump's decision to exit the Paris Climate Agreement.
For sure, Clinton. This appointment could signal a potential shift in environmental policy and regulatory approach from a second Trump administration. Former Congressman Zeldin lacks extensive experience in environmental policy, but his background and his voting record indicate he frequently voted against environmental and biofuels legislation. Former President Trump has stated Zeldin would ensure fair and swift regulatory decisions to unleash the power of American businesses. Zeldin is expected to focus on restoring U.S. energy dominance and revitalizing the auto industry, and his past record has been anti-biofuels.
He's got a record relative to renewable fuels, and it's not particularly positive. In 2017, then Congressman Zeldin co-sponsored two bills, one which repealed the renewable fuel standard, another which would really dismantle it to the point where it would not be an effective tool and would prohibit any blend above E10.
In 2015, Zeldin and other members of Congress sent a letter to EPA with concerns about the proposed 2016 renewable volume obligations under the RFS, saying the mandates would break the E10 blend wall and drive up prices for consumers. So Jennings says they have work to do in the confirmation process to get answers on how Zeldin will implement E15, the RFS, and small refinery exemptions.
I don't have to remind your viewers that we had a very challenging time under the first Trump administration with all of the small refinery exemptions that were issued that really undermined the renewable fuel standard.
As far as 45Z tax credits, EPA doesn't have jurisdiction over the program, and only Congress can overturn the program. But
what President Trump can do, and what we expect him to do, Michelle, is effectively put a pause on all pending regulatory efforts by the Biden administration.
Zeldin will also undo Biden administration environmental regulations, particularly those targeting power plant pollution and vehicle emissions, allowing construction of new natural gas export terminals, and potentially withdrawing from the Paris Climate Agreement. Environmental advocates have criticized the nomination, seeing it as potential regression in environmental and climate policy and support for increased fossil fuel production. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Another Day also puts more names on the list to be a possible future leader for USDA. Farm Journal Washington analyst Jim Wiesmeyer says a short list for the job has surfaced. Now added to the list, Charles Herbster, a Trump donor who led his 2024 rural campaign coalition. Also Sarah Frey, she is the founder and CEO of Frey Farms. We also told you about other potentials earlier this week, including Greg Dowd, Kip Tom, Sid Miller, Ted McKinney, Zippy Duvall, Mike Conaway, and Ray Starling. Also worth noting, Wiesmeyer says Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is reportedly playing a very active role in the USDA Secretary's selection. Congress has now returned to Washington, and the lame duck session is poised to be hectic. They have about 5 weeks to pass a funding bill to keep the government open. They also face pressure to approve more disaster relief funds following Hurricanes Milton and Helene. Meanwhile, some Farm Bill programs expire at the end of this year. Before the election, the October Ag Economist Monthly Monitor asked economists to weigh in on the fate of a farm bill. The majority said Congress will pass a new farm bill in 2025. 7% said it could happen yet this year.
I've been told that Klobuchar has told her people, and she's told Stabenow, by the way, let's get a bill done this calendar year. I think Stabenow may actually want a bill done because at least she'll be able to have some control over that bill where the Democrats won't in a Republican-controlled Senate beginning in the Congress in 2025. So it makes logical sense, doesn't it? Even though logic and Congress frequently don't go together.
And Senate Republicans are set to elect their leaders today. Another big weather system is tracking toward the west, bringing both rain and snow. Meteorologist Alyssa Heilman joins us with an update.
That's exactly right. Rain and snow in the west, and it's mostly in Washington, parts of Oregon as well. And then as we advance this going into Thursday, you see it moves east and then south as well. Let's take a look here over on the eastern half of the United States. We're seeing this long area of rain, really from the Great Lakes down to the south, especially Alabama, Georgia, Florida there. You're seeing a widespread area of rain for Thursday morning and into midday Thursday. Now, this area this rainfall moves east and actually gives some rainfall much needed on the East Coast that's been seeing some wildfires in the recent days and throughout the beginning of this week as well. So much needed rain on the East Coast there. Now going into Friday, Saturday, Sunday, through the weekend, we start to see that same system builds back up on the West Coast, bringing more rain, bringing more snow back into those same areas of the Pacific Northwest. Again, especially in Washington and Oregon as we go into Sunday and then into the next week as well as we go further into Monday, seeing more rain and more snow back on the West Coast. And a Canadian producer is wrapping up harvest. Jason and Carmen finishing off his corn and thanking his crew and the beautiful fall weather for making it happen. I'll have more in your forecast coming up.
Happening right now, drought conditions are contributing to a large wildfire along the New York-New Jersey border. The Jennings Creek wildfire has burned thousands of acres and is threatening dozens of structures. High winds and dry air are also not helping matters. Crews are also forced to fight the fire on rugged terrain, with some areas too steep for bulldozers to go. At last report, the fire was 20% contained. While the full scale of weather losses from this year are still being added up, the American Farm Bureau Federation says only 1/3 of 2022's uncovered losses from natural disasters have been addressed. And its economist says uncovered losses from last year and this year are still unaddressed. Farm Bureau's calculations put total crop and rangeland losses from 18 major disasters in 2022 at over $21 billion, with a total economic loss of $165 billion. Of that, now it estimates over $10 billion was uncovered losses. Last year, it estimates losses from 28 major weather events were almost $93 billion. The impact to ag was almost $22 billion, and again, uncovered losses were nearly $10 billion. For this year, Farm Bureau is estimating billions more in ag losses. Tuesday was a tough day for grains. Is there anything that can pull it out of a slump? We'll talk about that coming up next. And later, Georgia is about much more than peanuts. See how the state is growing its citrus industry in the country.
Ag Day is brought to you by the Pork Checkoff. Your Pork Checkoff dollars are hard at work building a bigger appetite for pork right here at home. One of our main goals is to encourage younger generations to join us at the table. Visit porkcheckoff.org/radio to see how we're reaching this new audience.
Tyson Foods reporting fourth quarter earnings that beat expectations. Tyson shares moving toward their biggest gains in nearly 3 years yesterday on the news. It now expects adjusted operating income to rise as much as 22% during fiscal year 2025 compared to this year. It also says demand for chicken has improved. It posted earnings of 92 cents a share for the fourth quarter, with chicken accounting for almost 70% of Tyson's profits for the period. Beef posted a $71 million loss. The U.S. dollar is continuing to strengthen, and that's impacting grains right now. AgDay's Michelle Rook has more in Markets Now.
Another down day in the grains on Tuesday. Chuck Shelby is with us with analysis. And, we've had a little setback here to start the week in the grains. Were we kind of due for a correction, or did we just run up into some chart resistance in a lot of these cases?
I think we had a pretty good run in the markets after the election. We saw some gains. We saw some good demand show up. We'd made a pretty big run, and so market profit takers came in. Some negativity there, but overall, the U.S. dollar rallying pretty sharply probably caused some concern. But hopefully, if we pull back here as we have, that we'll see world buyers step in and think these are some good values again to be purchased in our grain.
Yeah, that's been kind of the case, hasn't it? We go down to these levels where we see demand surface, we go up to the top side of the ranges, and then we get farmers selling too, don't we?
Yeah, I think another factor is, harvest is really winding down here, and a lot of producers have put grain in the bin, and they're not inclined to let it go unless we get rallies. So overall, basis has improved pretty radically. So I think, this is just a way the market's going to behave here. And again, when we go down low enough, we find buyers. If we go up high enough, there's still some farmers who are willing to let it go if they can get a decent price on a good basis.
And as far as the soybeans, the lower soybean oil market was also a bit of a culprit.
Yeah, I think it's probably got to do with potential policies, a new EPA administrator that will come on with the new administration.
The wheat market has also been a culprit in pulling corn and soybeans down both Monday and Tuesday. Do you think the wheat market is seeing all technical selling, or is this the improved weather that we've seen?
It's probably a combination of improved weather. Also, it's very sensitive to what the dollar is doing. We should be able to find some value here. I think, world wheat supplies are really not that big, but we're kind of the last resort for world buyers to come into. But I'd say we're pretty close to a bottom here with the breakdown in the market in the last few days.
All right, let's hope so. Chuck Shelby, Risk Management Commodities. We'll have more AgDay coming up.
Starting here with temperatures this afternoon, and we're seeing some areas of colder air, especially out in the west in a lot of those mountainous areas. 54 Salt Lake City, 51 Denver, 51 as well in Billings. Now we turn towards the eastern half of the United States. Some more mild temperatures, 52 Chicago, 59 St. Louis, 63 in Cincinnati. Now let's take a look at these overnight temperatures going into Thursday morning. We're seeing again some colder air, mostly in the western United States, 36 Salt Lake City, 29 Carson City, and then some more, again, mild conditions off to the east, 45 in Cincinnati, 38 in Rochester. Now temperatures for tomorrow, those high temperatures throughout the United States, again, seeing that colder air to the west and some more mild conditions for the rest of the United States. Let's take a look at the jet stream. We're seeing right now this ridge, this high pressure system on the eastern half of the United States, and then a trough that's digging in really in the central and kind of in the western United States as well. It's moving east and it pushes out that high pressure, that ridge, pushing it out into more of the Atlantic Ocean. And now as we see this ridge builds back up, this high pressure system across the central United States towards the Great Lakes, another trough is digging deeper back down on the west coast. That moves and continues to push out or go over that high pressure system as it moves further east across the United States. Let's take a look at our temperature outlook the 19th to the 25th of November. We're seeing warmer above average temperatures in the northeastern United States and then cooler than average temperature in the southwestern United States. Now let's take a look here at a couple cities. We've got Snowflake, Arizona, sunny conditions there, high of 59, low of 26. Rainbow, Texas, high 77, low of 43. Finally, Sunshine, North Carolina, high 57, low of 41.
Pork exports appear positioned to set annual volume and value records this year. The U.S. Meat Export Federation reporting 238,000 metric tons were exported in September. That's a growth of about 8%. Officials say while Mexico continues to be a top performer, the real bright spot were smaller regions.
Central America, almost 13,000 tons, up 37%. That's not new. We've seen these trends in Central America throughout most of the year. But Colombia as well, huge month at 11,000 metric tons, up 35%. The Oceania region, Australia in particular, performing well. in an ASEAN region, with the Philippines almost double the volume from a year ago.
Through the first 3 quarters of the year, pork exports were 5% above last year's pace at 2.23 million metric tons, value up 7% to $6.36 billion. Speaking of the third quarter, Farm Journal's PorkBusiness.com issuing its third edition of the State of the Pork Industry Report. Pork business editor Jennifer Scheich talking with industry-leading experts about sow and grow finish information and what they're seeing in the barns, with one industry leader saying there's a lot of positivity in the pork industry right now, which they say can be attributed to higher farrowing rates this year, along with lower stillborn numbers.
This has been a huge industry focus, and man, as a veterinarian, I feel like finally this is a win that we're finally going the right direction, because as an industry, we have put so much effort into trying to get reductions in sow mortality. So I think it's multifactorial. There's a lot of causes, but certainly PRRS is absolutely a factor. So just some numbers from past years from the MSHIMP data. So 2011 to 2012, 40% PRRS incidence rate. 2017 to 2018, 35% incidence rate for PRRS in our industry. 23 to 24, we were less than 20%. It is absolutely hands down the best PRRS year we've had since we started tracking PRRS incidents.
For a look at more on the state of the pork industry, make sure to check out this story over at porkbusiness.com. Well, it's a growing ag business in Georgia. We're talking about citrus, but how was it impacted by Hurricane Helene? We get an update next.
AgDay is brought to you by Winfield United. Unlock the full potential of every field with Winfield United crop protection solutions, built from decades of research. Built for success, built for you, built for it. Learn more at winfieldunited.com.
Georgia may be known for its peanuts, but its citrus industry is growing fast. However, recent storms have producers concerned. Damon Jones of the Georgia Farm Monitor gives us a look at what could be a record-breaking harvest.
Not even a decade ago, citrus production here in Georgia was almost non-existent. But thanks to a recent boom, there are now more than 500,000 trees planted on nearly 4,000 acres of land within the state. And while some growers were affected by the recent storms, it is still shaping up to be some huge yields.
We're estimating we lost about 5% of our trees statewide, but in the grand scheme of things, that's not as bad as some of the other commodities. But when we look at individual groves, we saw anywhere from 0 to 40% fruit loss, just depending on where in the path of the hurricane they were, what variety it was, and how old those trees were. It's looking very promising. Even though we got hit by Hurricane Helene, it's still looking like this is going to be a record year for citrus.
That is very good news for the industry, as it suffered through 2 straight years of little to no production due to the late freeze in 2022.
So the trees are kind of overcompensating this year, and if you go out and look at trees, most of the limbs are almost laying down. They have so much fruit on them, which is good for this year, but that means in the future, like next year might be a lower year just because they've invested all of their resources into this year.
With that in mind, it's imperative growers are well prepared for the coming harvest and what to do with the crop once it is off the trees.
In the coming months, just keep a very close eye on your crop. With all this cold weather we've been having, you can expect the fruit to start coloring up, and just make sure you've got a good plan in place for where you're going to send the fruit. I've heard some interest in exporting the fruit to Florida, and make sure you've got the right certification so you can actually get them over the state lines.
That's because citrus production in the Sunshine State has fallen more than 90% over the past quarter century due to hurricanes and citrus greening. And while it is a relatively new industry here in the state, Georgia is well positioned to help fill the void.
Well, right now, research is just really getting started. So one of the things we want to focus on is freeze protection methods, because that is one of the things that most threatens the industry here. We don't have the disease pressure that places like Florida do. Right now, the Georgia citrus industry is still pretty small, so you have pockets of citrus, so they're pretty isolated, and that keeps them safe from most of that disease.
That being said, there is still plenty of research to be done in order to maximize yields year in and year out.
A lot of the questions are just cultural management practices, fertilizer questions, when they should be fertilizing, how much. Similarly with canopy management, should they be pruning, when should they be pruning? Also with irrigation, how much water should they be putting out and stuff like that. So there's a lot of questions that still need to be answered. So it's an exciting new area of research for the state.
Reporting from Tifton, I'm Damon Jones for the Farm Monitor.
And our thanks to Damon Jones and the Georgia Farm Monitor for sharing that story with us. And that's going to do us for today's edition of Ag Day. From all of us here, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day out in farm country.